Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. The following story that you're going to be listening to, it was sent to me by one of our dear sister. The message reads like this. Hello, Brother Nashi, how are you? Can you please post my story as anonymous? So currently I am staying here in Johannesburg, but I come from Zim, and because of my desperation, when I came here to South Africa, I then became friends with this other woman. So when I arrived, like the first time that I arrived in Johannesburg, there was this other woman who used to sell some pub at the taxi rank, at this other taxi rank. She then asked me if I knew where I was going, because I was just walking around the rank and I didn't even know where I was headed to. She then told me that I was about to get robbed. So this woman then offered me a job. After she had offered me a job, I worked for that woman, but I then became friends with her daughter. So her daughter, what she does not know is that her daughter regularly comes back into the CBD where she prostitutes herself. She then told me that the money that her mom was giving me, it was never going to be enough. So it was far much better that I use my body. And because of my age, a lot of men will come chasing after me. So I then started to prostitute myself. This was when I came here when I was 20 years. So I've been doing this thing for the past 3 years here in Johannesburg. But if there is anyone who can direct me to any good church, I am tired of our churches that are from Zim, because I have since gone to some of these churches, some that are there in Soweto. Like I went there and I spoke with one of the prophets, but unfortunately this man, he ended up sleeping with me, and at that time he just gave me some river stones and he told me that I was supposed to return back home and I was supposed to use those river stones because they were going to cleanse me and they were going to chase away all of this bad spirits that were causing me to become a prostitute. So after I had used those river stones, this man, he would call me like each and every night at 9 p.m. He would call me and he would say, Madzimai, what are you doing? And then I would tell him that I am in bed, and I'll be lying to him that I am in bed, yet I'll be on the street. This man, he will then tell me that I need to pray, and I would not even pray because already I'll be in the street prostituting myself. But with time, the more that he would call me and tell me to pray, the more that I started to dream, to have a lot of dreams, and I would see him in my dreams and I'll be his wife in the dreams. The next time when I went back to Soweto, he called me and I went there. I found out that his wife was not at home, so I didn't want to go into his room, but he told me that he needed to wash me, to bath me with some holy water, and we could not do it outside. So I finally agreed. The moment that I went inside his room, I was the one who was now begging him to make love to me, and me and him, we made love. From that day onwards, I found myself hating these white garment churches. So as for now, I am looking for any recommendation, any church that is in Joburg. I am willing to go to that church because I am tired of prostituting myself. I am really young and I know the kind of spirit that I am fighting against. So I grew up in the city in Harare when my father and my mother were still alive. Then my mom and my father, they both passed away on the same day in a car accident, and all of these things, they were caused by my uncle. So my uncle is a well-known ritualist. After my uncle had passed away, I was then taken to the village and I started staying with my grandmother and my grandfather. So my uncle is the one who is remaining in my mother's family. My mom was the last one to die, and my uncle is the one who is remaining. Like when I was staying with my grandmother and my grandfather, there was nothing that I could do. But believe you me, I was always scared. At all the times I was scared because it's that at their compound, I think that there are about 32 graves that are there, and it is really scary. Like at night, you could actually hear that there would be people that will be talking, and I would even hear my father and my mother talking to each other. And when I would look outside, then I would see a very bright light and a fire that will just fly into the sky, then it will explode. So when I told my grandmother that this is what I was seeing, then my grandmother told me that those things, they were the things of the night, and if I see anything like that, I was not supposed to look outside. All that I had to do was to pray. One day, my grandmother had gone out to work in the fields. When she returned back home, she told me that she had met this other snake. In our country, we call it chiva or puff adder. She met that snake, and that snake, it nearly bit her. So in our Shona culture, that snake, it means bad luck. Something bad is going to happen to you if that snake attempts to bite you, because that snake, it is really cool. It just doesn't get that angry at all the times. So when my grandmother told me that she had met that snake that wanted to bite her, and she said that this meant bad luck, later in the evening, my grandmother cried out loud when she was in her bedroom. By the time that me and my grandfather rushed to her bedroom, when we went into her bedroom, we saw a man, but this man, he was quite confusing. We could not understand if this was a human being or a spirit, because this man, he was just black, like real black, like smoke, black smoke. That is what this man was like, and he just disappeared. He just looked at my grandfather only once, and from that day, my grandfather, until the day that he passed away, he was partially blind. And on that same night, my grandmother, before she had passed away, she only said, "My son has finished me," and she meant that my uncle had actually finished her. So the problem was that in that village, everyone knew that my uncle is a ritualist. So even if we would come across any challenge, there was no one who was even willing to come and assist us. And I had heard a story of this other sister from the Roman Catholic Church that had once came to my grandfather's compound to bring them some food, and she was chased away by a black mamba. So after people had heard that a sister from the Roman Catholic Church had been chased away by a black mamba, everyone was just scared to come and visit my grandparents. So we used to suffer a lot, and my grandfather, he used to cry, and he would say, to think that my son there in Harare, a lot of people, they say that he is a rich man, Mbinga, but here I am, his father, I am suffering. We used to suffer. We would go into people's fields, then we would dig up for some ground nuts after people would have harvested. That is what we used to survive on. We would go into the mountains and to look for some wild fruits. Yet my uncle was a well-known man who was quite rich, and I had came across his pictures on Facebook because most of my friends, they had phones, but I could not even afford to have a phone. Each and every time when my friend will be on her Facebook, I will search up for his name and I will see what people will be saying, and people will be just saying that this man is quite wealthy, he is really rich, the whole family is very rich. But when I would think about my grandfather and I, the way that we were suffering, most of the times I would just give my friend a phone back, then I would run back home and I would start to cry. It then happened that my grandfather made a mistake. This is what my uncle told me. My uncle told me that he had no intentions to sacrifice his own father, but my grandfather he then said that, but he made a mistake and he went and he visited this other red garment prophet. So when he went there, when he was about to be told that my uncle was a ritualist and the oath that he had taken was the oath to destroy everyone in his own family and using their blood to make money. So then my uncle said that he transported himself and his tokologies and came to that prophet's house and he spoke with that prophet. But my grandfather did not even realize that his own son was there with him in that same room where they were having their consultation with that prophet. Then my uncle told me that he offered a lot of cattle to that prophet if he was going to give my grandfather prayers that were actually going to kill him. So my grandfather was then given some prayers, and he came back and he told me that he had been told by that prophet that we were supposed to bath ourselves using those prayers, but I totally refused. I said, no, this I cannot do. I just felt bad about it. And then after my uncle had bathed himself with the holy water, the very next day he started complaining and saying that he had a terrible headache, and that is what killed him. My grandfather, the day that he finished using the holy water, that was when the day that he passed away. He just screamed and he said that he saw that there was a man who looked like that same man that we saw on the day that my grandmother passed away, and he collapsed. I started screaming out for help. People just came out of their houses and they looked at me, and they were even scared to come and ask me what was wrong. I was really young when this thing happened. At that time, I was just past 16, witnessing all of this evil. The night that my grandfather passed away, the police were the only people that came to talk to me. I was all alone, and during the night I could not even sleep. I kept on hearing people that were talking outside, and even when I would go outside, I would not even see anyone. And I felt so scared. At around 12 a.m., when I heard my voice being called out, I rushed out of my grandfather's bedroom. Then I started running and I went to the police camp. That is where I slept, and I waited for my uncle. So my uncle came, and he came with some people from his church, and those were the only people that attended my grandfather's funeral. After my grandfather had been buried, there was nowhere else I could go to. I was then taken by my uncle, and he wanted to show the people from his church that he cared for me. So at his church, what he was saying was that the reason as to why he did not want to associate with his parents, it was because his parents, they were witches, and he did not want his parents to bewitch him, and he did not want the spirit of poverty to follow him. So he had given his life to Christ, and he was not able to associate anymore with people that did not believe in the same Jesus Christ that he believed in. This is what he said the day that he took me from the This is the testimony that he gave the first day that he went with me to his church. So I'm sure that he wanted to show people that the reason as to why I looked so poor, yet my uncle was quite a rich man. He just wanted to show people that he was in the process of converting me so that I can become a Christian. And when I started staying with my uncle then told me that I was supposed to stay at the cottage, and at that cottage. And when I started staying with my uncle, he told me that I won't be sharing the same main house with him and his wife and his kids. And as for his wife, she hated me a lot. She would not even speak with me. I was more like a maid to her. So I then started staying at the cottage. Then close to the cottage where I was staying, there was also the sleeping quarters for his gardener. But this man, you can just see that he's someone that is mentally ill. And the more that I spoke with him, the more that I realized that my uncle was nothing but a ritualist who was also using this man. It then happened that I started to hear the same voices that I would hear when I was still back home. And then there was this other day when I got the courage. I got out, and it was somewhere around 11 p.m. when I got outside, and I saw that there was this other guest house which was close to my sleeping quarters. The door was wide open. So I said, oh, if my uncle sees that we have forgotten to lock this door, he's going to be very angry. And when I went to close that door, just before I had locked it, I felt like something that was inviting me inside that guest house. Something was pulling me in. I then went in there, and when I went in there, to my surprise, the same coffin that was used when my mother and my father passed away, because my uncle was the one who bought very beautiful coffins for them. They were both white in color with these golden handles, and that was the same coffin that I saw in that guest house, even with the same blanket that we had laid on top of her coffin when they were bringing it down. That blanket, the reason as to why I remembered it was because my uncle's wife, she had returned from a trip in South Africa. So she said that she just felt like she wanted to donate this blanket as a final send off to my mother. I saw everything. And when I was walking towards that coffin, that was when I fell down. I felt as if there was someone who had punched me at the back of my head. When I woke up, even right now, I don't know if I was inside a house or if I was inside a police station, but all that I know was that the two guys that I woke up and I saw that they had tied me on this other chair, those men, they introduced themselves and they told me that they were from the CID department. I said, CID department, where am I? What am I doing here? Then they laughed at me and they said that I had actually stolen some money from my uncle. So this money that I had stolen from him, it was $4,000. I started to cry. Then one of the guy who was playing the good cop, he came to me and hugged me and he asked me if I wanted anything to drink. So I told him that I wanted at least Fanta grape. This man, he then returned with 2 empty bottles of Fanta grape. Then they started to torture me. The way that they were torturing me, the other one was hitting me on my kneecap with that empty Fanta grape bottle. Then the other one was hitting me on my other knee, and it was really painful. After they were done, they told me that if I was going to say anything, then they were going to come and collect me again. So early in the morning, then my uncle came and I was blindfolded and I was taken into my uncle's car. Then I returned back to my uncle's place. When I returned back to my uncle's place, my uncle visited me at night and he was holding a small dish that was full of warm water and a towel. So he pretended as if he was really sorry. Then he started to wipe me, but the way that he was wiping me and the places where he was wiping me, it was not even nice, because he was wiping me with that towel in my thighs, and I didn't feel right at all. Therefore, he was my mother's brother. This man, he then got onto the bed and he started taking off his trousers. That was when he slept with me. I was scared because of the torturing that had happened the previous night. I was even scared to cry. I didn't do anything. From that time that he slept with me until I ran away, I did 6 abortions because he did not use any protection on me and he did not allow me to go and get a family planning. So each and every time he would know that I have fallen pregnant, I would tell him, then he would wait until the pregnancy was 4 months old. Then one of his doctor would come, then would do some things on me and remove the baby. It was really painful each and every time until I ran away and I spoke with this other man who was also staying in that neighborhood. He's a church elder somewhere at this other church. When I went to that church, that was when I started to date my, whom I can say my first boyfriend, the man that I loved. When I started to date this man, then my uncle got to know about that relationship. He visited me like he always did and forced to sleep with me, and he asked me if I had already started sleeping with him. So I said yes, and he just smiled at me and he said, I want you to continue sleeping with him. Brother Nashi, it really traumatized me, because this guy, when he got so sick after I had went to his place for a sleepover, I was then called by his mom, and his mom was really angry at me. When I got there, the things that I saw, they still traumatizes me till this day. This is the reason as to why I just prostitute myself, because each and every time when I am sleeping with a man, it is like a drug. I forget about all the things that happened to me when I was still back home in Zim. The mother then forced my boyfriend to remove his undergarments. When he removed his undergarments, I could not even look at his manhood twice, because his manhood, it had been ripped open and he kept on screaming in pain. He had bandages all over his manhood. Then the mother started to scream at me, and she said, "You see what you have done to my son." I then ran out of her house because of the things that I had seen. They had traumatized me. And the moment that I thought of like really running away was when I saw her driving around the neighborhood looking for me. And I then decided to communicate with my friend who was already in South Africa. I then came here. Unfortunately, along the way, I had to sell my phone because I did not have the money that was enough for me to get to Joburg. So I just thought that maybe if I would get to Joburg, if I would ask around, then I was going to be told where she was staying. But when I arrived in Joburg, then I saw that Joburg was really big. It was not what I thought that it was. When I started working as a prostitute, there are two of my clients that I thought of dating, but those men, they both passed away. The first one, I didn't know what exactly killed him. I just saw that he was no longer in communication with him, and I did not know his relatives. He was South African. And the second one, he was from Zim. So he had introduced me to one of his cousin's sister who is in Cape Town. So one day he just complained and told me that he was really sick. And at that time, he told me that he had been admitted at Chris Hani. So I went and I visited him. By that time, his manhood had not yet exploded. After I had left, the sister then called me and told me that her brother had passed away. And she said that the thing that is scary is his manhood. She said that his manhood was more like mincemeat. His manhood had exploded. Brother Nashi, when I heard this story, that was when I thought about what had happened to my first boyfriend. From that day onwards, I told myself that I would never give my love to any man again. It is far much better that I just become a prostitute, because I feel as if my uncle cursed me. Dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to me by one of our dear sister. Strange things do happen in this world.